Hey everyone, Tony D and Little Joan here with a hot take on the impending, here you go Joan, have a snack, Louisville riots. And it's a very interesting development. Now this is the Gateway Pundit, so but they have this video here from Twitter, and I'm gonna turn it down. A U-Haul pulls up and right away they start unloading it. They've got abolished the police signs. No big deal. I mean, this is just an organized protest, right? But according to Tim Pool, what happens is a lot of times they build the banners with the intent of hiding weapons either within the banner or kind of like behind them or other things that they're going to use. I think, was that the only video they had? Yeah. And apparently in another video, not here, Tim was saying that they're pulling out shields as well. And they got the Antifa symbol on it. Oh, you're killing me, Joan. I give you the hamburger, it lasts 2 seconds, and you won't shut up for the video. All right, come back over here. Spoiled little dog. So this apparently is the woman who rented the U-Haul. The Gateway Pundit kind of sussed it out. Holly Zoller of the Louisville Bail Initiative, if this article is correct. And I guess the Bail Initiative is another one of these groups that tries to undermine the bail system in the United States. And the Gateway Pundit is claiming that it's Soros connected, which isn't surprising because Soros does donate to a lot of left-leaning causes here. So yeah, I mean, it is what it is. You know, these people are trying to do this stuff. I think they're just woefully ignorant of what the consequences of their actions really are. You know, maybe she's wide-eyed and naive and thinks, oh, I'm helping people, you know, by getting rid of the cops and abolishing the police. But really, when she is in her apartment and, you know, a bunch of maniacs come storming in and start robbing everybody, and she wants someone to help her, she's going to regret this, right? I mean, that's what happens to a lot of people. That's what happened to Jenny Durkin. You know, she was fine with all the Chaz stuff until they came to her house, and then suddenly it was like, oh, I need the police. You know, a lot of these guys, the first thing they do, and guys, I mean Antifa, they call the cops the moment things don't go their way. And here's breaking news, again in the Gateway Pundit. At least 10 shots reportedly fired at police by Louisville Black Lives Matter rioters. At least one officer shot. So that's not good. That's not good at all. And, you know, the whole Breonna Taylor thing is another situation in which Black Lives Matter has chosen a terrible, I shouldn't say terrible, a not so perfect martyr for their cause. There are people who have been wronged by the cops big time, who were doing nothing and got shot and killed. Those people would make excellent martyrs for the BLM movement. But instead, they seem to always pick people who are kind of like, eh. So with Breonna Taylor, like, the facts aren't even correct. The fact is, and this is coming from Tim Pool via CNN, that Breonna Taylor wasn't asleep, and according to Officer Tatum, he doesn't believe she was, you know, totally innocent. And her boyfriend fired at the cops as they busted into his place. Now the cops claim they shouted, they knocked. The boyfriend claims he did hear the knocking, but couldn't hear the shouting. Couldn't hear the part where they said, "Hi, we're the police." Which, you know, it's, who do you believe? Maybe the police just didn't do it, but they put in their report they did. But there is a witness, so you would think the witness would know, be able to settle that. Maybe they're lying, though. Maybe the witness is lying. Maybe Maybe the boyfriend's lying. But the fact remains that he did shoot at the officers first. They returned fire. Breonna got hit and died. So, you know, it's unfortunate. It really is. But, you know, what do you expect the police to do? Do you really want a police force that, oh, we got shot at, guess we better leave? I mean, that would be pretty ineffective. You know, if you have a police force, this is what they do. They are guys with guns who show up to maintain the order. And again, I'm not a huge fan of the cops. I've got a lot of problems with them. I wouldn't call the cops unless I was absolutely desperate. But a lot of other people call the cops for anything. You know, anything at all. And these guys weren't just there on a whim. They were serving a warrant. I think a lot of this can be fixed by legalizing drugs. Because the warrant they were serving was, of course, for drugs. I guess it was Breonna's previous boyfriend who was a drug dealer. You know, and so who knows? It's complicated. But to, you know, elevate Breonna, George Floyd, and Jacob Blake as these saints that walked among us, I think is totally unrealistic. You know, they were in an unfortunate situation, but nobody's totally innocent. And, you know, if you are someone who's dating a gangster or a criminal or, you know, any kind of person with a record, you're taking a real risk. You're taking a real risk that they could just up the ante and do God knows what, and that you could be shot in the process and murdered horribly. You know, in the world of crime, there's a lot of horrible stuff that goes down. I've read about it. It's awful. It is awful. And you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. If your boyfriend is a criminal, get out. Get out now. Because, you know, if somebody shows up from an organized crime family and they want to make sure there's no witnesses and your boyfriend's to blame, they ain't going to spare you. They're not. 1, 2, not much of a difference. So, what happened to Breonna under ideal circumstances shouldn't have happened, but it did. You know, somebody fired a gun. She was there. If her boyfriend wasn't there with a gun, what would have happened? The door would have gotten broken down. She would have screamed, and then she would have said, "Oh, it's the cops. You broke my door." So, you know, for the and what good does it do for people to tear down their own neighborhood? It does no good whatsoever. You know, this rioting doesn't do anything. It sets back the movement. BLM is not interested in black lives. They're not. Because this sets back black lives. This sets back everything that we have been inching towards. And look, I remember, I'm old enough to remember the days when, you know, it was a bad situation in some of these neighborhoods. Cops didn't go there. You know, I talked to some older cops, and yeah, they just wouldn't go into those neighborhoods. Those people were on their own. But as the years grinded on, that wasn't the case anymore. But now you've got people who are so entitled, so possessed by politics, they think they're under constant, imminent threat. It's just not true. It's just not true. These cops aren't hunting people. These cops are under enormous pressure to do the right thing, for the most part. Yes, some of them are bad. And I totally disagree with keeping those people employed. But, you know, part of that, part of it's just the police unions. Part of that's the politics of it. But I'll tell you what will not absolutely help is rioting. It won't help. They'll get more money. They'll be more oppressive eventually. Now in Minneapolis, they've abolished the police. And they haven't even completely gotten rid of them. And it's already a free-for-all. As crime has soared in Minneapolis. People are fleeing the city, probably for good. And I don't blame them. Same thing's going to happen to Portland, Seattle. Same thing's happening in New York and San Francisco right now. People are fleeing these cities. And I say, get the F out. Because they ain't getting any better anytime soon. It took decades to get them to the point where they were safe. Decades. And they were safe-ish. They weren't completely safe. Now, if you legalize drugs and prostitution, you make a huge step in the right direction. It alleviates a ton of the violence. You know, we've become accustomed to drug violence in this country. We have. You know, there was not drug violence back in the 50s. Not really. There wasn't drug violence back in the 40s. But in the 20s, there was gang violence over alcohol. That is being repeated with the drug prohibition. Legalize the drugs, legalize the prostitution, it evaporates. Literally overnight. Because those customers will no longer go to criminals to get their drugs. They won't. It's just too dangerous. You know, you legalize prostitution, there's no reason to go to an illegal prostitution setup. Because those girls, no matter what the gangsters say, you don't know what you're getting. You don't understand what you're getting. They can completely lie to you. There's no consequences. If someone has a business like they have in Las Vegas, then there is a person to sue, a person to take responsibility if they don't live up to what the state, parameters are. And they'll be prosecuted, and you could sue them. And there are people to take responsibility. When gangsters run things, there's no one to take responsibility. The only thing that can happen is, well, the cops can go arrest them and throw them in jail, but you're never going to get any satisfaction out of it. You're not going to get satisfaction from suing the company that sold your brother drugs that killed him. So if you legalize all this stuff goes away. It just evaporates. And there won't be police shootings because the violence will get so low. Most cities just won't even have a problem. It'll be like Canada. It'll be like Canada here. Yes, there'll still be guns and there'll still be, but the violence will evaporate. Most of this violence is driven by the drug war. You need a gun if you're going to sell drugs illegally. You need protection. Someone the other day who sells, I don't even want to say, but I know someone who sells a certain substance. It's not a real hardcore thing. But they told me a horrific story where they got robbed one time and they didn't have a weapon. So it was kind of a knockdown, drag out fight. And, that's what happens to you. And that happens to you a couple of times. You're going to get yourself a gun. You're going to get yourself protection. You make your business bigger and bigger, you're going to get more and more guns, more and more protection. And then once you have to fight your way for gang territory, then the sky's the limit. That's the way the criminal underworld works. But here's how it also works. If you legalize something, they get out. Because the only reason they're in it is because they can charge outrageous sums of money and rip their customers off and make an obscene profit. And it's like that. They couldn't do that if it was legal. It would be too much work without enough reward. People would be buying it, growing it. They couldn't compete with that. The only reason they can compete with it, they have a monopoly. By legalizing it, you break that monopoly, and the crime syndicates say, well, we're out of this. It's exactly what they did in Prohibition. They got out of it ahead of time. They were out of it before Prohibition ended. They got completely divested of it. That's exactly what would happen with the drugs and prostitution. They would completely divest. Completely. They wouldn't be in it. There'd be not enough profit in it. A lot of guys would just retire. They'd be struggling to find enough. They would, probably use their ill-gotten gains for something else, something more legitimate. And what that would do is eliminate the violence. So you wouldn't have cops armed to the teeth knocking down doors and no-knock raids. And Breonna's, by the way, wasn't a no-knock raid. You wouldn't have a need for it. There just wouldn't be any drug houses anymore. There'd still be gangs, but they wouldn't have the money. They make insane amounts of money just selling drugs for a few weeks. They make thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. They can afford to all buy machine guns and clothes and cars and all this stuff. Without that income, they're just guys in sneakers and t-shirts walking around. They can't afford guns. They'd be too expensive. In a few years, all the guns that are on the street, nobody will maintain them. These guys aren't disciplined soldiers. They're not going to maintain those guns. After 5 to 10 years, they'll all be unusable, those guns. They'll all be thrown away or locked up or, destroyed and locked up in evidence rooms. Then where are they going to get guns? They don't have any money. That's why they're criminals. If they can't make money like that, they got to make money how they can. Yes, there'll be robberies. There'll still be crime, but they'll do something else to make that money. And the profit margins, after a few years, the criminals will just realize, well, we can only make so much money now. There's just not a profit to be made because it's all gone. So, anyhow, all this could be avoided, but no one ever listens to me.